어서오세요 to my teeny tiny 세상. It's been a while and a lot has changed. I am now in America, my family moved states, we joined a new church, and half my family, me included, started new jobs. The past month since returning to America has been hectic, but now that things are settled down, I'm back and ready to take my YouTube channel more seriously. In this video, I'm going to be focusing more on culture shocks and how I felt living in Korea as a Black woman. I'm still getting used to talking to a camera, so for this video, I have a Yonsei Campus tour playing while I talk. I didn't realize how shaky the footage was until I left, so bear with me, I will be getting a stabilizer soon. I want to preface by saying everything I talk about in this video is my opinion. It's based off of my experience, but that doesn't speak for Korea as a whole. The point of this video is to bring awareness to cultural differences. I think it's good to learn what you can expect when going to another country, but I hope you keep an open mind and make your own judgments if you decide to go. Also, I was almost always in Sinchon, which is a province in Seoul, so I don't know how different other parts of Korea are, but since Korea is a small country, I don't think the differences are as vast as the differences in states in America. Now that that's out the way, let's start the video. I've hinted before that while I love getting to study in Korea, it was a lot harder than I expected, and in today's video, I'm finally going to expand on why that was. Part of it was because of me. I think I made it harder for myself by not learning more Korean, going by myself without knowing anyone there when I know I'm not the best socializer, and honestly, I was already in a less than ideal mental state before I left, so I think these were handicaps I put on myself that prevented me from getting the most out of my experience. However, I learned a lot about myself, and even the hard parts were great learning experiences for me, and I still plan to return to Korea next year. I did a lot of research before I left America on what it would be like as a foreigner in Korea, a Black person in Korea, a woman in Korea, and a Black woman in Korea. They talked about a lot of the same things, but none of them were things that actually shocked me when I arrived. Some of what they talked about, like the trash sorting, not wearing shoes inside, etc., were things that I didn't fully get used to, but I could respect for just cultural differences. One of the only things that actually bothered me was the smoking culture. People smoke a lot in Korea and they tend to do it in big groups. I had known about how much Korean people like to drink, but I didn't know they smoked just as much. There were times I walked out and thought it was foggy until I inhaled and choked on secondhand smoke. I grew up in a quiet town and very few people smoked on the street, and I don't know anyone who smokes personally, so this was a huge culture shock. I would often hold my breath when walking home and learn when the peak smoke rush times were so I could avoid them. The ground was always littered with cigarette butts, and it was so out of hand, they made unique trash cans for them, which is crazy because Korea doesn't normally have any public trash cans on the street at all. I will say, where I lived was surrounded by clubs, bars, and restaurants, so I probably interacted with more smokers than normal, but regardless, there are a lot of smokers in Korea. The next culture shock is related to the overall construction of the country. What I mean by that is that Korea is very mountainous, which I didn't know. So I wasn't prepared for the amount of steep hills, underground buildings, and everything being built up instead of out. You can pass like 100 businesses in a few blocks, and this made navigating very difficult. There are plenty of times I couldn't find a store, not realizing it was inside a different building underground or on a higher floor. In America, at least the states I've been to minus New York, stores are a lot bigger and wider, so I sometimes felt a little claustrophobic shopping in Korea. Not all stores are tiny, but most of them are built to optimize height rather than width, so you're often shopping between many floors. I don't think I've seen a store in America that had a bunch of floors outside of a mall, so it felt like shopping in a mini mall everywhere to me. Another thing is that because Korea has been a romanticized country for a while, although I think that is starting to come to an end, I didn't anticipate how old and aged a lot of the buildings would be, especially when it came to the bathrooms. I've gone to some of the nicest cafes that have bathrooms that look like the Choki from Matilda. Now, I'm exaggerating a little, of course, but bathrooms definitely seem neglected, and that is a good segue to my next culture shock: not being able to flush toilet paper. I think that due to the terrain, their sewage systems are working against gravity, so they clog really easily. Because of this, a lot of bathrooms have a sign and or a little trash can by the toilet. If you see either or both, do not flush the toilet paper. I've seen some newer buildings where you can flush, but they're not that common. I already knew this was a thing because I visited Korea a few years ago, but breaking my muscle memory was hard and it felt really unsanitary. I'm more germ conscious than the average person, so this was hard to deal with, especially because it wasn't just in public bathrooms. I had to do that in the building I lived in too. This was definitely something I was happy to leave behind when I came back home. Now, speaking of the building I lived in, the next culture shock was having to air dry my clothes. Dryers and dishwashers are rare in Korean homes. I didn't realize how much I took them for granted, but not having access to a dryer would actually make me mad some days. Washing took forever, not to mention I was sharing 2 washers with like 20 girls, so I never really knew when I'd be able to use one in the first place. My clothes were always stiff, wrinkly, and if I wasn't able to start washing soon enough, I'd be forced to wear damp clothes. I think besides the smoking, this was my least favorite aspect of living in Korea. When I go back, I will be getting a dryer. This next one is something that shocked me when I got to Korea and still shocked me when I was leaving. Being a pedestrian in Korea is not for the weak. In America, pedestrians always have the right of way. Even if they don't have the light at a crosswalk, they can still go and cars have to stop for them. And while jaywalking is technically illegal, except in New York, most people do it and it's rare to get in trouble for it. They also use stop signs at intersections without traffic lights to allocate the right of way for cars, and bikers aren't supposed to ride on the sidewalk, so there are sometimes roads that include a bike lane. None of this was the case in Korea. Motorcyclists, bikers, people on scooters, and even small cars will drive on the sidewalk. Sometimes cars will even park there. If you come to a corner without a crosswalk light, you either have to walk fast or wait because cars will not stop moving unless it's clear they are about to hit you. The only time a pedestrian has the right of way is when they have the green light at a crosswalk. I used to jokingly make fun of how Korean people always wait for the light, but by the end of my first month, you couldn't pay me to cross without it. This next one might be a controversial take. I fully expected Korean people to make a spectacle out of me, a black woman with locks being in their country. I saw a lot of videos of black and brown people visiting Korea, seeing how they got stared at and felt uncomfortable, but I can say I never felt like the color of my skin affected how I was treated the entire 3 months I was there. I think this is because of a few things. One, there are a lot of unspoken rules in Korea that revolve around not disturbing the peace of a space or inconveniencing the people around you, and that's not really a thing in Western culture, at least not to the same degree. A few I can think of are giving and receiving things with 2 hands, not making eye contact with people who are older or of a higher status than you, and not eating, drinking, or talking on buses or subways. I think my knowledge of these cultural norms prevented me from accidentally doing something rude and drawing negative attention to myself. I also grew up in a white majority space, so I was used to being the only minority everywhere I went, feeling other due to my cultural background, and having to code switch. So being one of the few foreigners wherever I went wasn't that weird for me. I think some foreigners are unaware of what it's like to live in a space where you're a minority not just statistically, but throughout your everyday reality. It's common for ethnic groups to live amongst each other, so they may never experience standing out for the color of their skin in their daily lives. This can be a huge shock for foreigners who've never experienced it before, and they may feel more self-conscious and quicker to perceive interactions negatively as a result. I'm not discounting the reality of racism and colorism in Korea because it is real and it is bad, but I do think sometimes situations can be blown out of proportion due to cultural differences. I got approached on the street by so many people and had so many interactions where Korean people showed me kindness or helped me in some way, and it really surprised me because it completely contradicted the stereotype I had been exposed to. I'm going to post story times on my socials about some of the times I got stopped on the street because out of the 12 times I got stopped, I had 3 kind of weird experiences. But generally, I only had positive experiences with Korean people and felt extremely comfortable around them. Next is cafe culture. Korea has cafes everywhere, sometimes multiple of the exact same brand within a few miles of each other, and they always have unique themes and purposes. I was always blown away by the cafes I went to, either for their design or the variety of drink options. American cafes are more coffee-centered and have similar aesthetics, while Korean cafes offer a large variety of drinks, oftentimes with coffee being a small portion of the menu. Flavored milk drinks, matchas, fruit aids, milk teas, etc. are all popular drink options in Korean cafes, and they take the presentation of their drinks very seriously. I'm a barista at heart and I don't like coffee, so I love visiting the different cafes, and I probably spent more time at one than in my own room. That being said, I noticed a few things. Korea has cameras everywhere, so their crime rate is significantly lower than America, and people can leave their stuff unattended without fear. I've seen Korean people come to a cafe, place their order, put their stuff down, and then leave for 30 minutes and no one would touch their stuff. Another thing I saw quite a lot was people coming to cafes and sleeping. At first, I thought maybe they had been working on something and just were so tired they fell asleep. But after seeing multiple people who placed their orders and then fell asleep, I realized this might be a normal occurrence. It was further confirmed when I saw a girl come in with an eye mask and a blanket. The other thing I noticed that grossed me out was how comfortable Korean people are putting their bare feet in the chairs. It was always the people who were wearing open-toed shoes too. I found this incredibly ironic, but also very disgusting. For a country so concerned with not wearing shoes inside the house for sanitary reasons, I would have thought this would be looked down upon, but I guess Korean people just like to get comfortable in cafes. Looking back on my time in Korea, I felt like I studied for a test and was super confident I'd do well, just to find out nothing I studied was on the test. I'm sure if I had realistic expectations, I would have been in a better mindset to roll with the punches and just live in the moment. But having everything I thought I knew be wrong was overwhelming, and it got the best of me towards the end. I still got what I wanted out of my summer abroad, and now I do have those realistic expectations for when I go back. I feel like I said a lot of negative things, but honestly, those were my only negatives about my time in Korea. I enjoyed everything else, and compared to how I felt growing up in America, negatives weren't that bad. No country is perfect, and I want to reiterate that all of this is my opinion. I hope anyone watching this video with the intention of going to Korea doesn't form their opinion of the country based off of what I say, but is able to avoid creating either an overly romanticized or demonized view of Korea before giving it a chance for themselves. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. I hope you leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy my content. I'll see you guys later, yeah? Okay, 안녕, bye-bye.